Abbas and Vikas are going to talk about. But I want you to understand, too, that it's important to recognize that we are in this in relationships in several ways. One, we're doing this through academia, so we are doing a good bit of work with the folks here at Rutgers and seeing some nice benefits out of that. Also, another vendor that was here, Greenlight Technologies, has been working with us to do proof of concepts as we work our way through that. And you'll hear some of that, too. But the last piece is the business is with us at the audit committee table, and they recognize the importance of this because the board, the audit committee themselves, is telling them they're going to approve the funding for our efforts in this space, knowing full well that eventually the business will be assuming responsibility for these controls. So without any further ado, I give you two very dapper gentlemen. I don't want you to think that they're not techies. At their core, they are techies, even though they're so well dressed.
Thank you, Rob. We appreciate the great introduction. Hello, everyone. Thank you, Professor Miklos and Rutgers for having us. We really appreciate the opportunity to attend. So I'll get right to it. We just want to start off the agenda. We're going to talk a bit, very quickly, about the COSO framework, what the new requirements are, especially around fraud risk assessment, and then jump into some of the internal, the anti-fraud controls that we're testing and the continuous auditing tools we've developed in-house. And then we'd like to close off with the joint effort work we've done with Rutgers around accounts payables and exception prioritization using the suspicious scoring model. So, COSO framework, it's been more than 20 years since COSO began developing its internal framework, and back then many of the developments in business and technology we take for granted now just weren't in place. So you could think back, companies were just starting to use technologies like EDI, smartphones, tablets weren't available, and the global financial crisis was very far, many years away. At the time, the internal control evaluation was relatively unsophisticated, let's say. So against this backdrop, COSO developed a conceptually sound framework which definitely stood the test of time. But over the years, COSO decided to refresh the fundamental internal control principles to make the framework even more robust and appropriate for today's ever-changing environment. It went through a 2-year revision, and recently a new framework was introduced this past May. So we asked, what is the rationale for the update? Well, there have been obvious technology changes and the associated risks, changes in the way corporate governance and the expectations of those doing the governing, and increased importance on compliance and operational activities. But more importantly, increased focus on risk assessments. And there are 17 of these here, but for the purpose of the presentation, we're only going to discuss number 8, fraud risk. So with that, we'd like to showcase to you a couple of the tools that we've developed in-house to demonstrate how we're addressing some of the requirements put forth by COSO. Yep.
Thank you, Vikas. So just to start off, we wanted to take a simple but an easy approach to start off with the data analytics. And so we divided our approach in 3 steps. And first is data extraction. We wanted to identify first what kind of tables that we need in order to perform the continuous analytics. So for data extraction purposes, the tool that we used, which was an in-house tool in CA, was CA AutoSys. It's basically a batch tool, which basically runs on SAP environments, and it'll just dump the particular tables that you need from SAP into a secured shared drive. Once that's done, we use simple tools which even non-IT auditors can use and can run data analytics tests on it, and we develop macros on top of them using Visual Basic applications. So for that, we also use the import functionality in Excel. So that there's already an existing connection tool available in Excel. If you program it right, it can basically connect to the secured shared drive and import the data into the Excel drive. The only limitation here is Excel, of course, can go only up to 1 million rows, not beyond that. Step 3, data analysis. And as I said, we've developed macros, we made it in a way so that there's less user error while running those macros. So as you see further in the presentation, I'll actually go through one of a few templates in Excel just to show that how user-friendly they are. Moving on to the benefits, I think Vikas can add a little more.
Yeah, definitely to highlight some of the benefits, we wanted to use Excel and Access because it does have a minimal learning curve. We didn't incur any additional licensing costs. We weren't as dependent on the IT department, and we didn't have to get approval from them. So there was no formal approval required for that. So that really made it a few of the reasons why we went this route.
So moving on to the product demo. Before that, I'll just list down a few tests that we've already are in place and we used for our audits as part of the audit universe. And we've categorized them in 4 categories as of now. Accounts payables. A lot of them are tests that you already know of, and a lot of the computer-assisted tools which are available like ACL and Caseware have them. But we wanted to start from level down, bottoms up, go up, and also use simple tools like Excel and Access to perform the same function. So we have accounts payable, payroll register review, travel and entertainment expense, and journal entries. And I'll explain a few tests, show the demo in subsequent slides.
And a key, one other thing is, we want to ultimately empower the business and hand this off to them once we've developed these, so they can monitor their own transactions and their processes independently, and audit can come in and sort of evaluate the results that they see through the use of the tool.
So moving on to the demos itself, and I'll just pull up one of our templates. So just to walk you through how this actually works, we created a basic user form, and there's Visual Basic application coding behind these user forms. And we've had those 4 tests in terms of user button clicks. So we'll start off from the data extraction phase. Now we know that the batch process already put the file in the shared drive. We're going to start off from the process where the data has already been extracted in the tool itself, and then we're going to run the test. So the first test, which is basically matching vendor accounts from the vendor transaction file to the vendor master file. And of course, we could do it through Excel using a join function, but we wanted to go at a very basic level so that there is less involvement or less tech involvement. So what we did here was, once we pulled all the files from the vendor transaction file, you could do it through that macro, which I stated. And then you only need the column number, which you're going to compare against. So this is the account ID, which is column number 4, which is D. I need this. And from the vendor master file, I'm going to compare again the account IDs. So this is again, right, column number 1, because it's A. So how I'm going to run it is, I'm just going to go here. I'm going to hit my user form, and of course it has instructions stated of how to run it. And I'll put in column number 4 because it's asking from the vendor transaction file what column I need to compare with the vendor master file. And I go 1 year from the vendor master file. And the test runs itself. And of course, this is modified data, which is not exact data. So the exception here, just to show that the test is working, what we did was, we got the vendor payments for North America, and the vendor master file only from the US. So the exceptions which should pop up are vendors from Canada actually, who have account IDs from Canada. So I go back out, and this is the result. And if I just filter on exceptions, I'll see the code here is only for Canada. So the US ones will not pop up because they're part of the vendor master file. The exceptions are popping up only for Canada.
And as you can see, this is all in Excel, so it's very easy for even the non-IT auditors to use, and there isn't any additional learning curve or additional help that's required. We give them an initial training, and then they're able to run with it on their own audits.
Yes, moving on to the next test. Of course, this is the fraud buzzwords match. This is again a very simple test which you may have already seen, but to execute in Excel, what I needed was, again, I needed a fraud buzzword list. So, which we already designed. Most of them are very obvious. You may say that nobody's going to put in a comment saying that it's just a bribe, but just for demonstration purposes, I have to put in some exceptions. And similarly, in the vendor transaction file too, this is a modified data, so I've added those comments in so that I can show it to you that the test works. So again, here, similar concept. I'm comparing column number 2 with column number 1 in the fraud buzzword match. That's here again. And similar logic. So, going back here, again it'll ask me for the requirements. I'm going to put in 2 for vendor transaction file and go on to 1. And it runs, and straight away you see how many times that word has popped up. So adjust is coming up 13 times, bribe is coming up 13 times. And if I just need to directly validate the concept, what I would go is I'll go back in the vendor transaction file, and I'll just do a Control F, and I'll search for adjust, and I'll just do find all. Okay. So what we have is 13 cells found. So it's a simple way, because people are so used to using Excel, they can actually validate the test right away. So that's the advantage. Again, moving on to the instruction sheet, a similar test again for non-business hours. And again, it's a similar concept. So actually I won't run this one because the concept is very similar. There's a holiday list, and I can actually find out transactions which are occurred on a holiday list. So what you could do is, I've already put in the holiday list for North America for 2013. I'm going to compare this column with the posting date column. And of course, it's going to pop up which transactions are posted on weekends or which transactions are posted on public holidays.
Do you mean like attending this on Saturday?
Oh, yeah.
If it's an expense payment.
Our expenses submitted might come up on this list.
Yes. Moving on to a more complicated test was duplicate payments, and we've seen that most of the time the quick hits come from duplicate vendor payments. And here the logic was more complex because we wanted to add a little more sophistication to the logic. So we wanted to see only payments which are above $1,000, which will pop up as results. And of course, I'm going to compare here 2 columns from the vendor transaction file itself. So what I'm comparing here is, I'm going to compare account IDs with the amounts. That's column number 4 comparing with column number 8. And if there is a duplicate payment, I basically will get an output in the duplicate payments tab. Again, very easy. If I see a duplicate payment, I just go back in the data, go and look it up and see what's happened there. So moving on, just running the test. And I have column number 4, account ID, compared with column number 8. And again, we are not talking here, it's not a small file, this is at least 10,000 records. So even though it's a pretty big file, it's not a large file in terms of records, but still, Excel works pretty efficiently on this. And of course, you can make it more efficient if you're using a lot of data, like about 1 million transactions. You could have a more sophisticated logic. Here there's basically a sequential search, so I'm using one column, comparing it sequentially. But if you want to get more sophisticated and apply better logic, you do binary search or bubble sort and then do a search. But of course, we wanted to keep it basic and make it work. So as you see here, I have duplicate payments. Again, it's modified, and I can actually look into them at why are they coming up as duplicate payments. So if you see here, this vendor account has about 4 duplicate payments. And of course, you can show it more visually by doing a pivot table on it. Again, easy Excel tools which can easily chart it out.
Yeah, so we've actually used this on about 5 audits already this year, and we've definitely gained efficiencies in terms of reducing the number of man hours per test per audit. So going forward, we want to just continue on that course.
Yes.
About the word search, it will be very useful if you can do a wildcard.
Yes.
So, I mean, in your example, I didn't see that.
No, right now it's not designed, but we could definitely do a wildcard search. That's a good option. And we've done that using Access database. So the tool that we developed in Access, we've actually used wildcard characters, and we're going to search on that too. So for Excel, you just kept a word list and we can have different combinations. But for Access, yeah, definitely. We've used the wildcard. Yes, questions?
Yes. For the vendor, when you match it against the vendor master file, do
Yes.
you exact match or fuzzy match?
It's an exact match as of now. But we could do a fuzzy match too, again, wildcard characters.
Jason's on it.
Jason?
Just a quick question. What's the frequency that you're running this?
Right now, it's a monthly report, but we could make it, the batch process basically can be modified. It could be a weekly report or it could be a bi-weekly report, depending on what you want.
Yeah, so we automated the extraction process as well, and we're getting monthly feeds in and not overwriting existing data. So once we have a larger data set, we'll be able to do further trend analysis as well.
Did you ever really anticipate, like, if you want the external auditors to rely on this and about logs and, you know, how to...
At this point, really, what we're trying to do is get efficiencies for the audit department, but also let the business see, right? We still have that relationship with them, what we're designing, because ultimately we want them to take the responsibility of it and incorporate that into their control environment. At that point, once they do adopt that, we anticipate that occurring within the next 12 months, then the external auditors can start using that, right? And looking at it as their overall control environment scene.
Jason, sorry, you're right. One of the things we did do is they are aware of the fact that all these initiatives and pilots we are running, the external auditors know about this, and the expectation is in 4 or 5 months' time, they will see the results of everything that we have done, and then we'll have a discussion about how much they can rely on. So, and it's a very tough discussion. Basically, everything comes down to if my fee is going to get reduced or not, right?
Yeah, exactly. If you guys want, reach out to me because we've been through this exercise already and we have some feedback for you.
Oh, perfect, yeah.
Yes.
Through this, you detect actual fraud, or you are just using it for your making your audit more efficient?
For now, we're trying to make our audit test more robust by incorporating these as part of the test. And you can see from the test that we're trying to conduct, and we do have a list of others that we're still developing, that they have a fraud angle to them. What we'd like to do, as Vikas said, as part of the new COSO framework that's released, is say that we now are incorporating in the design of any future releases to our control environment, and that's for the business, these fraud controls on their part.
I'm going to have to cut it short because we have another session. We need to put Brad and Steve on. So I hate to cut you off, Graham, but we're going to have to move forward.
Sure. So I won't just end it.
We'll end it.
Oh, sure.
We have a few more this, but
So, all right, just wrap up, I guess. Our future, okay. Just a quick update on the work we've been doing with Rutgers. We actually tried to identify vendor payments that were being made in LATAM that were, that had exceptions. So we worked with Pay, and she helped develop a suspicious scoring model using a belief function. We did get some great results out of that. It helped to reduce the number of false positives that we would have to look at and really make our population of items that we would follow up with the business, really reduce that. So it helped us a lot in that sense.
Okay, I'm going to give you how we're going to proceed from here. Brad and Steve will make their presentation for about 15 minutes. Then Joe's going to make his presentation about 15 minutes. But what will happen after Joe's presentation, we'll go out and get lunch and come back in, and then we're going to have the second part of this session, so we can eat while we listen to the second session.
And Bob is begging that you don't leave any food behind because or they will never let us use the auditorium again.
Okay?